Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. For this tutorial, I'm going to show you a more typical cake design that we might do as an order, and it involves using edible images, butterflies, an ombre textured buttercream, and how I transfer the font and the number without having cutouts. So let's get started. These are our Disney characters, princesses, that we printed out, and I am choosing which ones I want to use. It's a little easier if you find the ones that have a little bit less details, as in things that stick out, because you have more fragile pieces, they're just going to be more fragile. And I wanted to get a variety of the princesses, not all the same, just different ones. So what I'm doing there is I'm basically just cutting out the images, and I'm putting them into a plastic bag to keep them from drying out and putting those to the side. And those images we just printed off on the computer. This is a good option if there's a budget involved and they do not want to pay for sculpted characters, or they don't want to have non-edible characters or princesses that you can purchase online. You can always just do what we did and print out your images. And then I rolled out some, for this one, for the ones that stand up, I used gum paste because it's going to dry harder. And I did stick a skewer in there, and I attached the image with piping gel. That's how I like to attach them. And then you just kind of cut around your gum paste and smooth those edges. I do like to let the gum paste or the fondant kind of sit out for a little while, because I find that that makes it a little easier for your X-Acto knife to cut through it without tugging and pulling and distorting. Gum paste in general does dry a little bit faster than fondant. Okay, a lot faster than fondant. But if you're going to want your images to wrap around your conform to the side of your cake, as in the other ones, and that's how it's finished. I know I'm just scooting from one thing to the next here. And so you can see it's a little thicker to allow for that skewer in there, a little bit more tapered towards the top. And then I like to just put them on some foam, and I find that they dry a little faster that way because the air can kind of get through that foam. And I would try to make those the day before if you can, and just leave them out overnight. Now for these other princesses, I'm just using fondant, and I did let it set out a little bit. Again, I did not add any Tylose to these because I didn't want them to dry firm. So I put them in the bag until I was ready for them. And these are the colors that we're using for the ombre. I have a darker pink, a darker purple, and then I added white to that original darker purple and pink to get your shades lighter, is all I do. When you start with your darker colors, mix a little bit more of it. So that way, when you are making your lighter colors and you're taking some out of your original color that you made, you have enough. Now what I did was I just piped it on there kind of unevenly. And then I just used the spatula to kind of blend them together, and then use your smoothing comb to smooth it out. And I needed to add some to the top. I did not have a lot of leftover of that top color, so I did not do it real thick on the top. But once you pull those sides in, the top corners in, you're going to have plenty for the top. Now, I prefer to use metal combs when I'm doing a texture, but we do not have a metal comb for this technique. So I'm just making sure that the buttercream, that I'm spraying it with water to help smooth it out. Also making sure to rinse off your scraper as you go, because if you get pieces of buttercream in those little corners and the details of your comb, that's what's going to prevent you from getting the really crisp design all the way around. So you got to do a lot of wiping off of that comb. I even sometimes just put a pitcher of hot water next to me and dip the comb in there, especially if I don't have a metal comb, because the metal you can warm up with your blowtorch, and to me, that is what gives me the cleanest, crispish, what's the word I'm looking for? Crispest, the most crisp finished look. Anywho, so I had chilled both cakes, so that's why I can go ahead and flip them upside down like that to get it onto the board. And I can touch them because they are firm enough to not get heated up. And now I am just spraying on some of the glitter. You cannot have a princess cake without glitter. Absolutely not. So you can purchase these online, these applicators. I think they work pretty good. You do have to be careful not to put it too close to the cake or you'll get too much in one little spot. That's a good place to put decorations if that does happen. Now, I realize that I'm missing some details here just because I can't talk fast enough to tell you everything. But then the topper was purchased topper, and I just went ahead and I put on those toppers that I made and just put it all in the refrigerator. In the meantime, I'm making my font. I just found a font that I liked online. You can find online generators, and honestly, I use Photor a lot for that. You can pick your font and you can create it that way. It's free to use. And what you do is you turn your image upside down. Print that out, turn your image upside down, go ahead and color it in with a marker, or I'm using a pencil. Guys, just FYI, graphite is not poisonous. So even if you get some graphite on your fondant, it's okay. It's not lead. So then you take your transfer, that's your, what do you call it? Well, it's transfer paper. I know there's another word for it. And you put it on top of the reversed image. Make a copy of it, trace it out, and then fill it in on the back side, the reversed image. I hope this is all making sense with watching it and having me explain it. So it's backwards now, but when you place it on your fondant, the image transfer is going to be the right side out. So we're going to do the same thing with the name. It's upside down. Well, backwards, not upside down. It looks upside down because I filmed it from the other end. But then you roll out your fondant and let it sit for a while so it's firmed up a little bit. And then just, do you remember tracing this? Tracing paper, that's what it's called. Tracing paper from grade school. It's great. It's kind of like when you, anyway, we'll just call it tracing paper. There's a morbid thing that people used to do with tombstones with the image on them. If you know, you know. Anyway, you just kind of draw on the front side on top of where you have it colored in on the back side, and that transfers your graphite onto the fondant. And then let it set out long enough that so that when you're cutting it out, you are not distorting your font too much. Sometimes they will move around, so you just kind of have to rearrange it. And I start with cutting the inside of letters out first. It's a little easier, like inside those E's, it's a little bit easier to cut those out before you do the outside. Now I just put a little shortening on that parchment paper, placed it on top of the font, and that's what's going to help me just lift it up and place it on the cake where you want it. Instead of trying to lift it up and placing it on there and everything gets all wonky, just use your parchment paper. It's so much easier. And that shortening is not going to get in your way. You can wipe, if there's extra on there, too much to where you're painting, if you're painting it gold or any other kind of metallic or any color for that matter, like I'm doing, just kind of wipe it off with like a Q-tip or a paper towel. And then I'm just using my gold luster dust mixed with Everclear, my favorite way to do metallic. And I'm using a fine tipped paintbrush. And don't worry about the sides of the font or of the fondant, just the top. They're not going to look and see, oh, is that all the way down the side? It doesn't matter. Only concentrate on the top. That's really all that matters. And if you need to do 2 coats, let it dry and do 2 coats. But with the Everclear and the gold luster dust, I find if you get the right consistency, 1 coat is all you need. And then I just attached the fondant princesses around the bottom and one in the middle tier, just with some buttercream. And I used that third one that was on a skewer in between the 2 tiers to kind of, blend all the different sizes together. And then I'm just using dragées, some gold rods, a variety of different sprinkles to add an extra little touch. And since the cakes had been chilled, there's a little bit of condensation happening. So that's what I use to attach my dragees and my decorations like that. You really don't need anything else. In fact, the bottom princesses with the fondant probably didn't need any buttercream behind them. They probably would have stayed on just fine. The butterflies, since those are non-edible, you do need a little buttercream behind. And I just randomly placed those, and I put one on the top in front of the castle to kind of hide that stick a little bit. And then I just use a 1M tip just to add some stars in between the tiers, just to add a little bit of extra something. Now, I know this cake is not my standard cake that I show you guys, but I do these types of cakes all the time. So here's our final product. I hope you can see the ombre in there, and that the way that I transfer the font, make the font and transfer the font and the numbers was helpful to you. And I hope you learned something. I hope you got something from it. And we'll catch you on the next one.